Welcome to the Existential Hope podcast. Today we're joined by Sofia Lebedeva and Justin Bullock. This is a special episode of the podcast where we'll interview you about the world building project that you guys did, the world of Floratech. So I'm very curious to hear everything about how you guys thought around this project. But I was hoping we could start with maybe just you guys saying who you are and also maybe why you wanted to join the world building course.
Yeah, so I'll get started. So I'm Sofia. I'm currently based in Oxford, and my background is in immunology and biosecurity. So some of the things that I think about a lot is how biotechnology is developing, how does the rapid development of these technologies affect our world. And the reason why I wanted to join the world building course was to really engage with others in different disciplines, as well as get a sense of where are we going and have the time and space to think about what do I want the world in the future to look like and what world I'm working towards or building towards. So,
excellent. I'm Justin Bullock. I'm currently a senior researcher with convergence analysis that is focusing on existential risks from AI, and associate professor affiliate at the University of Washington in their School of Public Policy. I was really interested in world building. One of the things that we've been doing with some of our research is what we call scenario modeling, where we are trying to imagine what different futures we might have as a consequence of different parameters around AI. But it's still really hard to sit and think about it. We've been focusing on specific parameters and possible end states, but haven't had a lot of time to envision a rich, detailed world about how some of these things might play out. And the other reason is, I think, with what I do, I spend a lot of time thinking about worst case scenarios, which is important, I think, and helpful. But the fact that this program was specifically about existential hope and trying to envision when things go well was super appealing to me. And I think it achieved that. And it was quite nice to work with Sophia and the team on this.
Great. Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining and participating so passionately. So you guys built the world of Floratech. Could you maybe give a brief overview of this world? If you had to summarize it in 3 minutes, how would you say, what is this world?
Oh, wow. Starting out with the easy questions. Yeah, we really wanted to focus on a few different aspects of this world. One, I think because of some of our interests, including mine, was the role that AI might play in a future world where we're able to maintain control of AI and direct it in a way that leads to humanity's flourishing. So that was one aspect that we were incorporated into our world. Another was sustainable economic and eco-friendly living based communities. So we envisioned a world where some of the things that maybe we have lost in a world that is more nationalized and globalized is a focus on community and a sustainable relationship with nature. So that was another big piece of this world for us. And I guess a third piece is how people in these communities might live in a way that we thought was good and that would be a world to aspire to. So I think those are kind of the big pieces of what we were trying to capture in this world.
Yeah, and you mentioned it maybe in that answer, but could you maybe expand a bit on why you think this is an existential hope vision of the future? Like what makes this a future desirable outcome for humanity?
Yeah, I can follow up on that just briefly. One of the things is that in this world, we tackle two of our biggest problems in society well. One is navigating this transition with transformative AI, and one is developing a relationship with nature that's more sustainable. And so these are, I think we found, are two of our biggest challenges that we face. And so it's one of the reasons why this was hopeful. The other piece is this focus on community, which is trying to find a way to build communities that people want to live in at a size that makes sense, but where people also have all the resources that they need. And so I think those were some of the reasons why I found it to be a hopeful vision. Maybe Sophia has something she would like to add here as well.
Yeah, I think that one of my favorite parts of the world was the focus on community and like how within a lot of this dynamic and fast changing world, we really focused on pockets and like how small sections or like subsections of the community would interact with each other, and how despite the amount of technological progress that we were going to see in our hopeful vision, there was still that aspect of tight-knit community and community-focused, like bottom-up solutions, which I thought was one of my favorite parts of the world.
And what do you think in this world that you guys build is the most different from our world today? And also what maybe is the same, if anything?
Yeah, I think I can take this one. In terms of what is the most different, I think one of the pieces that really stands out to me is the different approach to education and how personalized education is in our world. So one of the things that we thought about was how can we use AI, or how will AI be integrated in terms of the education system? And in our world, we imagine that each person would partake in lifelong learning rather than learning from a set age to a particular age and then leaving school. And each person has a personalized system, so a personalized, plan or learning structure of different skills that evolve and changes with them as they grow and develop their interest. And also that their learning path isn't set or isn't a cookie cutter as it might be for whole classes of people. It's incredibly individualized, and the difficulty and the kind of range of the path changes and adapts to the person's needs and also the community needs. So I think that's the thing that I would say is the most different in our world relative to how it is today, at least in my educational experience, has been quite like static in a way, like pretty specific. And then some things that are the same, I think that we try to keep it realistic, and then there's still not all problems have been solved. There's possibly like equal or even more inequality. That was something that we definitely talked a lot about, and like how do these technological advances either exacerbate or continue the like inequalities that currently exist in our world today. So it's definitely something that's definitely something that's present in our world still. And then other things that would be quite normal. So if you struggle taking out the garbage, or kind of like basic fundamental things that sometimes things still just don't quite work the way you'd expect them to. So the daily frustrations in life are still, at least I still definitely expect them to be there. Yeah.
One thing I would add to that we kept some of the same human preferences for other human contact as the same as well. We made a lot of things you can do virtually, but people still gather in physical spaces together to share meals. They still gather in physical spaces to debate the direction of their community. And so we tried to keep some of that the same as well, to highlight the importance that I think we had of humans still spending time with humans kind of face to face. That was another thing I think that stays the same.
Yeah, I think you're showcasing some of these elements in your A Day in the Life story. I believe it's a day in the life of Lyla. And she has a romantic AI partner as well, I believe, if I remember correctly from the story. So maybe that's quite different, but that's really interesting. But do you want to maybe tell us how you landed on this piece for your A Day in the Life story? Were there any like elements in particular that you really wanted to make sure that you got into that story?
For swing at this, and then would love to hear anything Sophia has as well. Yeah, we were trying to strike a balance of what the rhythm of someone who work is still a thing, still is pursuing hobbies, still has friendships, and is really embedded within their community. And so I think, and also highlights some of the possibilities that advances in AI might bring at the same time. And also that there's still a decent amount of diversity of preferences, even within the community. And so as part of her day, Lyla has some interactions with AI, but also takes some time for herself to take care of her physical health and mental health, also is vigorously engaged in some research projects, also is spending some time enjoying meals, and also engaged in community governance type activities with her friends who agree on some things, but maybe don't agree on everything, and still has some challenges that come up. I think Sophia mentioned, you still got to take out the trash, and there are still things that are maybe annoying chores that are part of it. And we also wanted it to seem varied, so that it'd be a life that we maybe would want to have. There are multiple activities that she has going on that she enjoys, friendships that both are virtual in some domains, what we have, where you might use video chat, but also lots of the friends get together and spend time together in their physical spaces. I think those were, some of the themes that we were trying to highlight. I don't know if I captured it well or not, Sophia, but definitely feel free to add anything.
Yeah, I think that definitely captures a lot of the main points. Maybe some of the things I would add is one of the things that I think is a notable like technological advance is the fact that personalized medicine and personalized healthcare is also an integral part of the day. So it's something, instead of you going to the doctors and like that being a separate choice or kind of like something that happens or like a separate event that you do, it's more integrated into your everyday life. For example, Lyla's partner, Aria, tracks their symptoms. And if there's a bit of a feedback report that comes back, which is like, all your symptoms seem normal, and here are some of the basic biomarkers that don't show any elevated changes. And I think that's one of the really interesting things that I think that one of the developments that we see in this world that really has transformed the way that we view healthcare and think about healthcare. So that's something that I was quite excited to develop. Yeah, and that captures everything else.
Yeah. I'm very curious to dive into maybe more of the biotech stuff also in a bit, but is there anything you think you would expand on in terms of what people spend their time doing? You mentioned people still take out the trash, but do they still have the same jobs that we do today? If they have jobs, and what do they do in their leisure time? Yeah, are there any like key things that you came up with that you thought was really exciting also when you thought about this?
Yeah, I think that the way we imagine this, and Justin, feel free to chime in if you want to add anything else, was that most humans do still have a main job, but it might not necessarily be the main source of income. And it's a lot more personalized and, I guess, interest driven than a lot of society has today. And the kind of like different things that people work on are like smaller projects where people really come together with their specialized skill sets and are able to come together and solve issues in our world, day in life. Like we talked about Lyla taking part in some of these projects. But I think that what we would have loved to do if we had more time is to really actually try to build out more daily lives from across the globe and really integrate like different people and like what their days look like and how does it differ from country to country? What does that look like? And I think that the thing that is most interesting, what people generally spend their time on, is the freedom of choice, or kind of the freedom to choose what you spend your time on, but still continuing to work really hard and create a lot of things that advance society further, was at least my vision for this, or something that I really enjoyed. So taking away the necessity or the burden of work, but then still continuing or really allowing humans to channel their talent and their ideas in order to move society forward.
Yeah, I think Sophia captured that well. The piece that she mentioned first that I would just say another thing about is this idea of different sources of income or different sources of resources and what you need to spend those on. We tried to imagine that people would have access to some form of universal basic income and universal basic services that the community, in combination with government and in combination with maybe larger sort of mixed hybrid private public organizations might provide, but that there's still a functioning labor market where people do still engage in tasks that they find fulfilling and are rewarded for them. And so it allows them to still get some compensation for that. But the types of things people would need to do to get basic compensation are things that are more rewarding, that wouldn't be drudgery, that wouldn't be work that could be easily automated, that is work that's done in teams and work that's creative and work that's intellectually engaging and work that's about serving other humans as part of it, and maybe more like teaching and more community level classes and things. So we tried to strike this balance of different sorts of resources coming in, but still some incentives for folks to engage in additional work. But the work that we typically think of as more drudgery is taken care of in these what we call universal basic service packages that the community provides predominantly.
Yeah, it's a very nice vision with the universal basic service. Maybe you could tell us a bit about your timeline, because that was one of the things that we had asked you to provide as part of this world. And by timeline, we mean when you had created this vision of what you wanted the world to be in 2045, to then actually backcast and think about what sort of key things have to happen in order for this to be even possible. So what did you guys land on in terms of the timeline? What events did you think had to happen for your world to be possible?
Yeah, I can say a little bit about this. I think we focused in on about maybe 8 major events. So I'll hit them just kind of at the high level fairly quickly, but they mostly were around different governance tools that allow for this world to arise, and less focused on technological breakthroughs, although there is some of this. And we put forth a timeline where in 2025, there's a global AI governance summit. The nations of the world really start to take more seriously issues around AI, which we think also is maybe realistic. We see some of this going on today. They expand on the ethical frameworks and suggestions of directions for AI that's both highly capable, but maybe more safe. And then in 2030, there's enough wealth as a reflection of this and other technological advances that universal basic income and universal basic services begin to be trialed out at larger scales over time. And then in 2032, there is further advances in governance where AI partnered with democratic institutions allows for even more decentralization of key aspects of governance and feedback in those loops. And so there's an adoption throughout the world, across countries, of this platform that allows for a more tightly integrated feedback mechanism from individuals to their governance institutions, partnered and complemented by AI services. In 2036, we envision an international treaty that focuses on particularly more codifying and with the enforcement of actual regulation or actual treaty of instantiating some AI safety and AI transparency guidelines. And this is signed on to by all the major players in the world. They move from this like initial summit to actually a global treaty. And then in 2038, we get some technological breakthroughs. And these are things like AI-driven clean energy technologies that allow for decentralization of smart grids. Energy is provided much more locally and doesn't have to rely on centralized grids. And this allows for better investments in agriculture at the local level because they have more control over their energy sources and allows for a stronger control over their agriculture. And all this combined together with these advancements, both in technology, how the economy is structured, and AI tools, allows for basically a lack of scarcity on most things that people would care about. And so the economy shifts to more of a circular economy and a reusing of different resources. And this is helped managed by an AI optimized resource management process. In 2042, we really make the advances that Sophia mentioned earlier on as AI being applied to education and allows for these life learning, personalized platforms for continuing to advance your own education. And then that gets us all the way to 2045. And by now, at this point, most people, we say 90% of the globe, lives in AI-enhanced eco-cities. So these cities are not necessarily mega cities that we see today, although some of them might be, but people have gathered, a larger portion of the world has gathered into these cities where the resources are managed collectively and in partnership with the AI systems. And so that's what gets us to 2045.
Only 20 years away and we'll be there. That's great.
A plausible pathway.
It doesn't sound impossible, which is very nice when you think about it. So one of the things also that was a sort of limitation for your world build was that you weren't allowed to have AGI or a very advanced definition of AGI. So there was advanced AI, but not AGI. And you guys had a really interesting explanation to why there wasn't AGI. So can you please just explain that?
Yeah, I think I can tackle this one. So in our world, we say we end up with something called bounded AI agents that provide all sorts of specialized services throughout the world. And this builds off some ideas in AI safety literature. And the reason why it works in this case is that they actually turn out to be more competitive, that these more general unified models aren't as helpful as these more specialized bounded services or bounded agents that do particular things So they're tailored, to use the language of today, they're fine-tuned. They're created in such a way that they're not supposed to be, an AGI god or some unified agent that can do everything. And this, we think, maps to what we've learned about human and systems out in the natural world. That's often these tailored, specialized skills, specialized systems that actually perform the best. And so we think it's a reasonable pathway to expect that AI might go that allows for us to not have to build AGI or artificial superintelligence, but can still take the benefits of very advanced decision-making, very advanced information processing of specialized AI services, AI agents that do a lot of the things that would be helpful for humanity, but them not to be a unified AGI.
Yeah, I think it's a really great showcasing of how extremely different the world could be even without AGI. And yeah, that's a really interesting explanation as well. Expanding on that, what is a major problem that AI has solved in your world, and how did it solve it?
Yeah, I can take one more in this direction, I think. Again, maybe if Sophia has anything to add, that would be great. The biggest thing there's a couple, but from my background, one I can't help but highlight first is a lot of our coordination challenges. And so one of the things that the variety of specialized AI systems allows for is better community coordination across resource management, but also preference aggregation and at other levels in the system. So we mostly focus on building out the community ones, but it helps, address coordination issues throughout the globe, which I think is very optimistic, but something that we're hopeful for. And then the other areas that it really has helped with is education. And so solving this challenge of personalized, high quality education to individuals. There's also some breakthroughs in biology and energy, areas that maybe Sophia would be better equipped to say something about.
Yeah, I think I really want to highlight that the problems that I would say AI solves in our world build is really the coordination challenges. And maybe it's the thing of we already have a lot of the answers, but the right pieces aren't in the right places, even in our current world. And I think that's really the thing that we're really excited about is AI is able to help us coordinate or move the right resources in the right areas. So some of the technological advances, specifically in the energy space, would be to optimize energy usage and energy demand. So instead of figuring out crazy new ways of generating energy or something like that, it's really trying to figure out how do we use what we have now better, and how can we figure out what is the amount of energy and the demand of energy that a community actually needs, and what would be the best ways to produce that level of energy, and using AI to optimize that and also to coordinate the resource distribution. And that kind of ties in also with the universal basic income and universal basic services. So all of these services are integrated with each other. And then in terms of healthcare, so another on a similar theme is there's a ton of inequality in healthcare at the moment. So it's really figuring out how can we apply the solutions and the development and advancement in the field that we already have? How can we make sure that everyone can have access to them already, as opposed to what we have currently? Just figuring out how can we give access to things that we already have and make sure that everyone in the world can benefit from them, rather than the select.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack even more there. It was interesting actually what you said also about coordination mechanisms, that Anthony Aguirre, who was one of the judges and is in many ways the initiator of this whole project, because he's at FLI and they also did the world building competition a few years ago. And in that competition, they had the idea that there was AGI. And he noticed that what a lot of people went to in this course, like you guys, was the coordination part, different sort of governance innovations. So maybe, that seems to be with AGI, we don't think so much of that, or we think maybe that will just magically solve it. But yeah, there was some really interesting governance. But it would also be interesting you mentioned the universal basic services a few times, and I'm assuming healthcare would be part of that, but is there anything else that you already thought about that is part of that?
Yeah, so I guess my vision for this would be electricity, water, healthcare. Education can come as part of that. I think it's quite a central piece in our world in general. I think food or access to sustainable food, and then also education about nutrition or education about health and being Mental health is a huge aspect. So I think all of this would be tied together. So it would be a constantly developing package. So definitely would evolve. And I also think that the thing about, I think it could also be tailored and specified. So I think that like certain people, for example, like if you live in an area where you require vitamin D supplementation in the winter, that would be something that part of the package. At least that would be my vision. It would be custom to the different areas of the world as well. So it would be, instead of each person getting the same thing, I think it would be like based on regions as well. There could be some like tailoring, maybe like 80% of the pack would be the same, but there would be some space or some room for customization. That's at least my view.
Yeah, it makes me think of a conversation I had with a friend the other day where he spoke about when he had a meeting with some rich guy in Orange County. And this guy was saying that he had given his daughter 2 like cards where she had like limitless spend, which was, one was for Starbucks, so she could always eat. And the other one was for Uber, so she could always get home. And I can really see that you guys had more ambitious visions of like healthcare and these things as well, but that you just have a card and yeah, it gives you access to all these things. Yeah, I think it's a really inspiring idea. And you can think grander than Starbucks and Uber, but I thought it was like a fun little concrete way of thinking about it.
That's a little play on what universities did when I was in undergrad. You could have a card that could only be used at certain places. And so the places were like restaurants and the bookstore and a few things like that. So it wasn't unlimited, but your card was tailored to certain purposes, which is, I think, a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it seems really nice and really, I would say, equalizing as well. Yeah. Do you want to say anything on, because there's also UBI, right, in this world? Do you want to say a bit about how you thought about that?
Yeah. So we talked a lot about how this would look like in practice and wrestled with who funds it, how does it end up being funded, and how much. And I think the truth is, and Sophia can maybe correct me, we ended up glossing over some of those things because I think this is a really hard question in this world. Because another thing about our world is that other entities other than nation states play a larger role. And multinational organizations or multinational corporations play a role in sharing power, as do global, not global governments, but international governments play a significant role. So power and resources are a little bit more shared across these entities than how they are currently with nation states. I think still playing the primary role, although multinational corporations give them a run for their money. So I don't think we really fleshed this one out in a lot of detail, other than there would be enough where redistributing that from maybe a variety of different sources could provide a universal basic income. So it wouldn't just be like the local government, or it wouldn't just be the national government. It might be a combination of entities contributing to this. But Sophia, do you remember anything different in this area?
Yeah, I think that the main thing is that the role of the nation state has changed, or at least in our world, we move towards more local or more decentralized economies. But I think that the specifics of like how the UBI would be administered, definitely, I don't think we reached a conclusion. I think that would be a great space or a great place to explore further, because it is a really tricky, question that I think that I'm still thinking about.
Yeah, one of the things I remember that I think we discussed actually when we were red teaming on your world was that some things are very two-edged, in that something can either be very utopian or dystopian if it's used in the wrong way. I think privacy is one of those things that comes to mind for me mostly. And I don't know, maybe this is another thing that maybe you didn't get so much time to expand on, but did you think anything about how privacy and personal data is protected, since you have like these UBS, like Universal Basic Services, and the UBI? So I'm guessing there's a lot of personal data flying around. Did you think anything about how that's governed and protected?
I think that trust is an essential kind of component of the society that we were trying to build. So I think that an essential thing that something that is quite required, and it's something that's not super tangible, but I think that there's at least we're hoping that there would be a certain level of trust that the society would have of course, because in order to trust like an AI to develop an education plan for you, or in order to trust an AI to help coordinate your vote or to govern your voting system, I think that that's a big gap that I see with the current kind of population, and then also like with the world that we're trying to build. So I think that in terms of trying to figure out how the privacy would develop, I think there's a lot of different leaps that would need to happen in terms of getting the public to trust this governance system. And I think that there would have to be a lot of different changes. So I think that in terms of privacy and like how that would work and how that would safeguard the data, my kind of take would be that the AI systems itself would have built-in safeguards. Perhaps Justin can say more about that. But I think that trust will be a crucial component of this.
Yeah, I agree with Sophia on this. It's not something that we really spent a lot of time talking about with the world. There are some ways I think of designing the AIs such that they hold on to your data and kind of act as an intermediary for a lot of the other services. As we imagine them, a lot of these services are coordinated by these bounded AI agents. So one could imagine you having one word people have used, your own loyal AI assistant that represents you, and it holds on to all your data and only shares it in ways that make sense and that are needed for other AIs. So there are some potential technology solutions here, but it's not really something we dove into. But I would just add that having a high trust in society would make this much easier, and it's not something that we really have much of right now.
Yeah, it's an endless practice. Ideally, you have a lifetime to do like a world build. So yeah, there's always more to dive into. Is there anything on the technologies aspects of this world that we haven't touched on yet that you want to make sure we talk about?
I don't think so. We talked about how AI is used to help with coordination. We've talked about decentralizing energy and decentralizing kind of food production as things that we're able to do with these technologies. One thing that we didn't really talk on that I would have liked to have spent some time on was the relationship between the technology and biology a little bit more, and the relationship between technology and aging and longevity and those types of things. But it's not really something that we got into. I think we've hit most of the major things we were able to talk about in our world.
Yeah. Oh, do you want to add something?
No, I think that pretty much covered most things that I thought.
Yeah. Is there anything that you think has changed in the way that people get a sense of meaning in their life? How do people get meaning in their lives?
So I'll maybe start here. One of the things that we tried to highlight, two pieces of meaning that it's not that they don't exist today, but maybe because of our current way in which we interact with technology and our current incentive structures maybe get really de-emphasized that I think we would like to see emphasized. So one is like just a more harmonious interaction with nature. So our cities, we had AI generate some pictures for us based on our descriptions. And one of the things that came out of that was a lot of greenery and a lot of integration with nature as part of the city. And I think for our day in the life, Lyla spent some time at the beginning of her day in nature. And so I think there's some more meaning in building a better relationship with nature. And then the other is this community thing, which we've mentioned several times, but there's this real sense of community in the way in which people interact in the day in the life. And you're interacting with your friends and colleagues throughout the day, both virtually and in person. And the day is still structured a little bit around having meals together and evenings together. And so it tries to drive home this idea of the importance of having, roles within your community that you fulfill throughout your day, and that being a source of meaning. And then maybe one other I would mention is that a lot of us maybe have the opportunity to find meaning in our work. And this is not the case for everyone. And so this kind of elimination of a lot of the drudgery and a lot of work that people wouldn't enjoy allows people to pursue more meaning in what the hobbies / work that they pursue. So those would be maybe 3 hours. They're not new, but 3 different ways that we tried to emphasize how people get meaning in our world.
Yeah, I think that's great. Maybe the only thing I would add is there's still a focus, or there's still the space for spirituality, or kind of like a more like meditative or like peaceful way of interacting with the world. So there's still value and space for that. It's not the center of society, so it's not like the center of like religion, or spirituality is not at the center of like a governing body, and it's not part of the government structure, but there's still space for it, and there are still communities for that, should that be of interest. And I think that definitely finding meaning in their work and finding meaning in like creativity and community, those are definitely some of the biggest values.
Yeah, that seems like the best way also to have it in terms of optionality. You can choose. Great. Were there, when you set out, or when you started to think about this course, was there anything in terms of like other media that influenced you, like any books or movies that you felt were served as an inspiration for creating this world?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in first, if that's okay here. Yes. And as Beatrice knows, I sometimes send a bunch of stuff to her that I like in this space. I would just send two examples I would note that have really influenced how I think about a more positive future, or a reinforcement of values that seem good. One is Aldous Huxley's The Island, which a lot of people know about Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, which is more of a dystopian effort. Beatrice is showing me her copy.
Oh, I should. Yeah, I got it. I haven't read it yet, but I got it.
It's quite good, and puts an emphasis on community and harmonious living with nature in a world where there is some technological advances, but the technological advances themselves don't become the focus necessarily. So that one's really influential to me. Another one, Olaf Stapleton has 2 books in this direction that I find continue to influence me. One is Odd John, and in the story of Odd John, there's a future in which some humans have different types of capabilities, and they tried to start their own small community, actually on an island somewhere as well. And their focus on community and deriving richness of meaning from playing specific roles in a medium-sized community and a harmonious relationship with nature, but also take advantage of technology, is one. And then the other one is Olaf Stapleton's Star Maker, if I can use 2 from the same author. And Stapleton in that book highlights the rise and fall of lots of different types of communities and worlds. It just helped me think about the main parameters or variables that influence how civilization grows and falls over time. And in there's also this focus on harmonious relationships with one's world, and really playing the roles that one has in a community, and deriving a lot of meaning from that. So those are a couple that I would add.
I also learned something about you, Justin, but yeah, I absolutely adore Brave New World as the thing of what not to do, the more dystopian perspectives. I think that some of the influences one of the reasons why I was interested in joining this course is I was somewhat disillusioned with capitalism as a whole, and was trying to figure out what other systems are there, and can a functioning world within the capitalist system exist? I don't have the answer for you, unfortunately, but I think that I was reading a lot around that subject. So honestly, very pretty standard literature such as Das Kapital, or anything around more socialism or Marxism literature. That would be not necessarily my recommendations, but as a kind of another view or an alternative to it. Beatrice is about to hold something up again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got this book also recently, Optimism Over Despair by Noam Chomsky. I also haven't read it yet. I just got it today, but it just seemed very interesting, both from an existential perspective and from exploring, more socialist approaches. Sorry, you can continue.
I'm going to write it down. No, amazing. But yeah, I think that, and then the only other thing that I can think of at the top of my head is Michael Hudson. So there's also a podcast of Radio Sputnik, New Rules podcast. So that's talks a lot about these issues, and really thinks about, I guess it's also comments on current issues or what's going on in the world right now, and the systems that got us there. So I think that's my inspiration for media.
I'd add just one more thing, not from the kind of science fiction literature, but from some of the ideas around AI. developing some of those out, but a lot of that comes from a couple sources. One is a nice paper by Anthony Aguirre, who we've mentioned, who has a new paper it's called Closing the Gate to the Inhuman Future, I think is the title of it. And he highlights the challenges with creating ever powerful unitary, like foundation models or unitary agents, and suggests some different directions that I find helpful. And Eric Drexler actually has this nice report called Reframing Superintelligence. It's now a few years old. It came out in 2019, but he really lays out a case for a world in which we could just build comprehensive AI services in a bounded agent way. And this might be better than some of the approaches we're taking now. So just a couple on what inspired some of the approaches around AI as well.
And I just thought of another recommendation. So Infections and Inequalities. So Infections and Inequalities by Paul Farmer is a great book that I've read regarding how the inequalities within our world also affect the healthcare system and how all of these things are tied together. So I think it's really thinking about the intersectionality of these issues is something that I enjoy spending a lot of time. But these have been great recommendations. I want all of these links at the end. So.
Yeah, we will link all of them also from the episode page. So yeah, thank you for all the recommendations. That's really great. We have some reading to do. Yeah, are there any of the ideas that you think that you presented in this world that you can see influencing like near-term technology or policy making?
I'm happy to go to get this one started as well. I hope so. The AI stuff in particular, which drove some of how we thought about technology, is as much proscriptive as prescriptive. And I do think we should really think really carefully about the types of AI tools that we choose to make. And these things are not inevitable. They require lots of resources and lots of research and talent and capital. And we can pick the research direction in some meaningful ways and help shape this through regulation and incentives in the market as well. And I'm hopeful that the problem I spend a lot of time thinking about is how we control AI and make sure it isn't super destructive. And some of these ways of creating bounded agents give us capabilities that we want while mitigating at least some of the risks associated with AI. And some of the governance tools that we suggest, AI is a global challenge, and the way that climate change and war are global challenges. And so our argument that these things need to be addressed globally through discussions, but also likely through global treaties, seem important and could help shape the futures. At least around the AI, I hope that we move some things in this direction, and it does give people imaginaries or narratives or visions for how we could have a lot of the great things from AI while minimizing lots of the types of risks that a lot of people are worried about.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot in your world that I could see very near term that should be adopted now. So yeah, would love to see that happen. If you think about your world that you guys created, so we imagine this was in 2045. If you try to just like tease what would be the further evolution of this world, what would that be? I think both would be interesting to hear positive progress that you hope or envision for it, but also if you think there are any sort of new challenges that have emerged that still need to be dealt with.
Yeah, I think I can jump in on this one. I think a natural thing that I think we somewhat sidestepped in this world was the nature of space travel or space exploration or space colonization. There's a number of ways of terming that. And I think that would be an interesting challenge that would come up definitely by 2045, given the advancements of the different technologies. Do we go into space? Do we not? How do we deal with the population? So we didn't really touch on how fast the population is growing or what are the population dynamics in 2045. I think that's something we didn't spend as much time on. And I think that's one way that I can see like the world either continuing to go really well or having a potential challenge is what do we do when either overpopulation happens or are we having problems with fertility if people are like starting to date AIs and that's like they're treating their partners, how does that affect population growth? Is that something that is a problem or isn't, or like how do those things develop? So I can see naturally a number of issues coming up here, either with depending on which way the population dynamics end up developing. That would be a first challenge.
Yeah.
Sorry, Beatrice. The only thing I would add, or I guess the thing that I would add is echoing Sophia, is that those were a couple of things that I was thinking about as well. And we also didn't really touch on like how humanity and biology might interact more closely with digital technology. So is there a world in which there's more of a merging? We kept those things pretty separate. Human bodies enter VR spaces through headset kind of things. They interact with their AI through either robotics or through some type of screen. We didn't really touch on further down. Do we expect more things in the cyborg route, more things in actually altering the human genetic condition? So those are some things that I think if we successfully navigate some of these other things that are still questions that we're going to have to wrestle with together.
Yeah, even thinking about like digital minds and these sort of things, I'm probably in a very small like filter bubble, but I feel like that's something that I hear a lot about these days, whole brain emulation. And yeah.
This comes up too in the most recent kind of work in this direction of what a future might look like. Nick Bostrom has this new book, Deep Utopia, and this is one of the things that he wrestles with is what might the future state of minds look like. And of course, Robin Hanson's looked at this in The Age of M a few years back, and it's something that we still don't know what the technology would look like, but it seems like it could plausibly have a big impact on what the world looks like.
Yeah, it's weird to imagine, but yeah, we actually are hosting a book club on Deep Utopia, but I don't know exactly when this episode will be published, but I think it starts May 29 or something like that. So I recommend applying. You should be able to find the links on our social media or on the like Less Wrong forum or EA forum as well. It's time to wrap up, but I will ask one last question that I would love for both of you to answer, which is how did you find the practice of doing world building? What are you taking away from it? Is it something you would want to do again? And then also if you could just share like one message or idea that you hope that listeners will take away from your world build.
Yeah, I can tackle this. I loved it. And the other thing I didn't mention earlier, I've taken my hand at a little bit of science fiction. I have my own world that I've tried to build that plays in with Olaf Stapleton's world and some of the characters from his universe, trying to envision what might the relationship in the near future be between humans and maybe slightly altered humans and AI, and what might that look like. And one of the things that I didn't do while writing that book is really get some mechanics, set out some of the mechanics of a world build like we did with this class. And so I found it just immensely helpful to be forced or structured to think through before designing the world. What is changing? What are your core assumptions about this world? How is it influencing how people live? What is the relationship with nature? What is the relationship with the economy, with each other? How do they find meaning? And be somewhat explicit about that in advance. And so I think it will help me in my own both just scenario modeling about how things might go with AI, but also I hope to write more believable based in kind of real science fiction in the future. And so that was one of the great things about this course. The other thing that was really nice that I would love the opportunity to do again was to work in teams. And so I come with this not only with my own biases, but with my own background and training and issues that I focus on. And so sometimes in our team, getting to chat with Sophia in particular, given her background, just opened my eyes and helped broaden the types of things that I would focus in on. And the third thing was, though, something that you haven't mentioned, Beatrice, we had these guest speakers throughout this course, and several of them, I basically immediately went and followed them on Twitter, but several of them really got me thinking in a different way. So one in particular, Jason Crawford, I think is his name, and along with some other thinkers is really talking about pathways to progress, how much progress have we had, but also how might we realistically have progress in the near term. And I have found at different times in the past, not always easy to see the progress that we make, that we should clearly, I think, acknowledge despite some of the challenges the world presents us. and then thinking more carefully about how to solve some of these. Energy being the one that I have been really trying to learn more about, that Jason had some really nice thoughts about. But yeah, we had a lot of fun with the course, a lot of benefits to me, both in my immediate kind of what I'm researching on, what I'd like to write on, and then just learning about, how other people thought about these things and the issues they came with resolved. Super interesting, and hope Foresight or other folks do it again, and would hope other people would sign up for the class and take it. I found it a lot of fun.
And just to chime in, making sure that I'm assuming that we're talking about things that we enjoyed about the course and like any takeaways that we have. I really enjoyed the teamwork aspect of it. I think the working in groups and getting to share ideas with Justin and Kirill like every week, and thinking about how like getting the different perspectives and getting the different kind of like inputs from people with different backgrounds has really helped open up my own thinking about these issues, and also just exposed me to a lot of new ideas and concepts. And I think that has definitely propelled and inspired me to do more of my own writing and reading on the subject. I also definitely want to give a plug for the guest speakers, because I think that their input and their frameworks and also the presentations that they gave were really useful, to a nice addition to the course, and really helped like structure and generate the ideas and create the framework for what we were thinking about and doing that week. But I definitely recommend this course to anyone.
Thank you, guys. That's very nice to hear that you're happy with it. And also, yeah, I really loved all our guest speakers, and yeah, very grateful to them for showing up. And I love that I think they disagreed on some things, which I think is good. And also for world building in general, that's what I've been told is good, is that you want to have, for creating a robust world, you want people with different expertise, you want people with different opinions even, because that's what the real world is like. And so you're going to have to deal with that regardless if you want to implement something in the real world. So yeah, I think that's it. That's a wrap. Thank you guys so much for joining and for being part of the course, and yeah, for hopefully interacting with more of the world building stuff in the future then also, it sounds. Yeah, thank you guys, and yeah, lovely to see you as always.